Hello and welcome to part 19 of our video series on building a Node, Express and Postgres based API. Today we're going to be continuing our work on our authentication tokens, and we're going to be implementing a function that generates and inserts an authentication token for us into our authentication token store. Now, if you want to follow along with me, there is a link in the video description below, just so that you can go ahead and download the GitHub repo. If you want to follow along, the branch that we're working from today is the part 19 start branch. So if you check that out, you'll have all the code that we've written up until this point. So today we'll add a nice function that generates tokens for us, and then we'll write some corresponding unit tests just to test and make sure that that code is working as we're expecting it to. First things first, what we're going to want to do is have a way of generating a unique identifier to represent a token within our database. And what I mean by that is, even if we try and generate the token, say, 1,000,000 times, we should never come up with the same token. And what that's actually commonly known as a universally unique identifier, or a UUID. Now, within the JavaScript ecosystem, there is actually a really useful package just called UUID, which gives us a bunch of functions to generate universally unique identifiers. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to install that package so that we can make use of it. And we're just going to install, it's called UUID, and the version that we're going to install is 8.3.2. So we'll just do npm install UUID at 8.3.2. We'll add that one onto our package.json here so that we've got it. And then what we'll do is we'll just head over to our authentication token folder, and we'll just add a new function called generator.js. And what this is going to be responsible for housing is our code that's going to generate and call the insert token function for us so that we can centralize it in one place, because we're going to be using it in a couple of areas within our code. So what we'll do is we'll just create a new function called create authentication token. And that's going to take a single parameter called user ID. And then what it's going to do is it's going to return authentication token store dot insert token, which is going to take a user ID and then a token. So let's fill in the imports that we're going to need. So we're going to import UUID, and then we're going to import authentication token store. And then what we'll do is we'll actually invoke the, there's a method on this UUID library here called v4, and a v4 based UUID from this library will combine a bunch of different things, from timestamps. There's an internal counter that's used as well, so that it will generate a string that's 36 characters in length with a mixture of uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, and then there's some dashes as well. But it'll create an identifier that's entirely unique every time we invoke this function, so that we'll never end up with a clashing token within our database. I'd highly recommend having a look at the UUID library, as it'll give you a bit of an idea as to how these different token generators are implemented. But for now, all we're going to need to worry about is that we've got a nice token that's generated. It's going to be a unique string, and we can pass it on to our authentication token store, insert token, and that's just going to take it's going to take an object. Actually, it's going to be a user ID and a token wrapped in an object. So we'll just wrap that one in an object there. And then what that will be responsible for doing is returning what gets inserted into the database there. So it'll go ahead, insert the authentication token, and return the result of that as well. What you'll notice is this is an asynchronous function, but we don't need to await on it in here. And the reason for that is we're not actually taking any actions on the result from that function call. So what we can do is we can just return the promise straight from within this function and let whatever's calling this function deal with any awaits that are required within that particular code block. So now that we've got our function here, what we'll do is we'll just do module.exports equals, and then we'll have create authentication token exported. And all that's left for us to do now is to go into our authentication token file again, and then we'll just add a generator.unit.test.js file. Just grab some of the boilerplate code from the top of the file here. Here we go. So what we're going to want to do is just mock out the store, and then we're going to want to import this create authentication token function from generator, and then we'll have a describe block, which is going to be generator, a describe block for the function that we're going to be testing, which is this create authentication token, and then finally a test for that particular function call. So what we're going to want to be testing is that insert token is called with the user ID and the generated token. So what we'll do is we'll just do insert token is called with the generated token and passed user ID. And it's going to be an asynchronous test because we're going to have to wait for this create authentication token to actually resolve. So we'll just do a wait, create that, and we're going to have const user ID, just have a random user ID here, and we'll pass that into here. And then what we're going to want to do is just write a small expect block that's just going to check that this insert token is called with these values passed in here. So we know what the user ID is going to be, and what we can do with this token value here is we can just write a simple regular expression check that's going to check that it's a string that's 36 characters long. So what we'll do is we'll just do expect require store dot authentication token store dot insert token dot to have been called with, and then we've got an object, and it's going to have the user ID, then it's going to have a token which is expect dot string matching, and we can just create a simple regular expression here which is going to be A to Z 0 to 9, and then using this backslash here, which allows us to escape this dash because it's a special character within regular expressions. So by adding this backslash on here, we can say that this dash is also an accepted character, and then we'll put a length, and we know that it's going to be exactly 36 characters long. So with these length checks here, you can put a minimum number, so you can have, say, 1 character long up to 10 characters, or you can leave the second part of that blank and you can just have at least 1 character. But what we're going to want to do is just specifically say it's going to need to be exactly 36 characters in length. Now, another way that you could do this is you could mock out this UUID library and actually do something like a require in here that mocks out that return value. But what I quite like doing is, whenever possible, leaving these libraries intact so that we can see the real responses that come back from them, so that we can make sure that we're working with the right things. So what we'll do is we will run some unit tests, see how this performs. npm run unit test, and we'll see if these tests pass, which they do. Let's just check. We want to have a look at the generator tests just to make sure that they're working. Generator.unit tests, that's okay. What I'll do for this, I'll just give you a quick overview of what a UUID v4 actually looks like. So when we're calling this UUID v4, you notice that we've got this one here is 36 characters in length. It's got numbers, lowercase letters, and it's got those dashes dashes in there as well. What I'd recommend doing, have a look at the UUID library in more detail, because it'll give you some idea of how these v4 tokens are generated, but that'll give us something that's unique whenever we insert these into the database now. And that's it for this particular video. In the next video, what we'll do is we'll look at adding a handler to go ahead and authenticate our user and generate these user tokens or authentication tokens ready to be passed back to the front end. So I hope this video has been informative, and I'll see you next time.